Hello, everyone. This is LeiLani Cauthen, the CEO of the Learning Counsel News Media and Research Organization, also proud Edu Jedi Grandmaster. Lot to tell you today. So we're going to get right in. And if you have questions as we go along showing you all this data, just put it in chat or type in a question so that we can answer it as we go. I have people here who are going to help me make sure I see them as we go through all of this. All right, so we're talking about 2022, but first we're going to be showing you the 2021 data that just came off of our two largest surveys that we've ever done, one for administrators and one for teachers, with a lot of cross analysis as to what the answers actually were. So I'm going to start off with just making sure everyone knows who's the Learning Counsel. We are a news media, thought leadership, events, and research corporation that really, we're doing about 22 events a year now. These are the events we're planning for next year, starting off the year, February 3rd, with a virtual. Most of the rest are live in market. We're actually going to be traveling in the next year again. So we're super excited about that. And these particular day-long workshops that we'll be hosting for administrators all across the nation. The Edu Jedi, if you're not familiar with that, is a membership organization. There's about 450 schools and districts that are members of that. In the spring, we hold their national virtual events for the Edu Jedi. We're also involved in the Hybrid Logistics Project, which is a beta function demonstration for the Uberization of learning, which a lot of companies are sponsoring now. All right, so the survey for this year. So we had about 21,098 educators respond. There were 1,394 completed full responses from 373 districts, 202 schools, and 819 teachers. Really long surveys. This takes a lot of time for people to do. So most of the respondents were responding just to be able to be entered into the Edu Jedi Levels Awards. So the demographics from the administrator side, school and district administrator side, a lot more rural this year than we've ever seen before, but that would be obvious because so many new schools and districts joined the fray with device rollouts to everyone, and also from teachers, huge response from them. So we put everything in context against our maturity scale, which starts out with most schools and districts just doing device rollouts, thinking that that's a strategy, and then they sort of mature along the way. The 10th level of maturity, very few schools and districts have reached, which is up there at that Uberization and becoming expos, which are experiential learning with very precision intersection with teachers. So I can get into that, but I won't here for this particular event. The top takeaways for 2021 are that the market's really fractured. It's moving into a lot more alternatives, far less traditional school models. Both administrators and teachers are interested in that delivery model shift, and they're most interested in hybrid high flex. If you're not familiar with that, you need to download our special report, the most recent one, and blended and flipped. Competition for students remains very high going into 2022. So the market actually grew less than we expected in 2021, given that the three big stimulus bills were flooding the market, but at least 60% of the districts have yet to spend their full portions. A lot of that money hasn't even moved out of the federal level into the districts. So purchase intention for digital curriculum remains really high. 63% of respondents are planning more purchase of digital curriculum. Hardware purchasing was up a bit, and it's expected to remain stably much higher than it was pre-pandemic. Workflow and elements of time and space logistics remain mostly manual. This has a lot of attention on the Learning Counsel analysts, from the Learning Counsel analysts, because it's a major pain point for schools and districts. Teacher-centric lesson planning is also a massive hidden time cost, and I'm going to get into that as we go through all the data, because a lot of administrators don't understand what they're doing, having every single teacher make everything themselves for lesson planning. It's kind of silly. It's also part of the reason why so many schools and districts are claiming that they're going to be buying more professional grade digital curriculum. There's also a lot of new types and new ways of offering PD that are needed based on responses, especially from the teachers. So the pressures that people cited on the administrator side were time and space management. That's a huge problem for them because They've moved to AB weeks, AB days, a change in their block schedules. Some students want to remain at home part of the time, and states have put new rules in. Maybe you can't have hybrid learning anymore. You're supposed to be all fully in person and with an alternate online school. So it's a really messy landscape for leaders. And then on the teacher side, student absences continue to be a really big problem, and time management is a really big problem for them. All right, so, I wouldn't go through all of that data. You guys are going to be able to get this full slide deck. But in 2021, of the 56 million or so students, this is what we saw happen. There were slight gains in 21 for traditional public schools due to offering more online paths attached within that institution and by their charters. Private schools actually lost some students. Homeschooling was up by another 0.6%, but it's slowing in rate of growth to under 10%. It was over 20. The estimate of pure traditional without at least offering some hybrid simultaneous flexibility, which means attending classes via web conferencing, is less than 50% of the market now. So the back to normal mantra is sort of dead in the water. There's not a lot of schools that are even able to do that to serve their publics. They have to be creative. So 37%, or about 21 million students today, are opt-outers of purely traditional public, and they're in public online only, charters, private schools, or homeschools, with another small percentage, those remote learners who rarely attend physically, but they attend via web conferencing, and in some places, the school district is allowed to count that as a seat time for the school. So this is a significant thing. It's probably one of the most significant trends that we see, is what's actually happening to the market as it sort of fractures apart. All right, so total K12 market EdTech spend, this is minus the paper resources, 36.7 billion. It was up by 1.8 billion over 2020. In hardware, it was about 14 billion in spend. Major software systems, about 7.8 billion. That was up by 3.3%. It grew by 200 million, which is more than we expected. Spend on all hardware, network, and major systems had a slight increase of 100 million. So that's including networks. The increase by 500 million for major systems includes all their big iron software, the framework-based systems where you have to put things in. And then digital curriculum, 14.9 billion, up by 1.8. This is the biggest gainer. It will continue to be the biggest gainer in 2022. Paper resources down by another 200 million. It's hard to estimate how much the paper market has been down, because 10 years or so ago, it was a $25 billion market. So this is huge. It's what's decimating a lot of the publishers. The consumer comparison is this is a slide we show when we're on the road to a lot of district leaders, is that school districts themselves spend about 14.9 billion. The straight to consumer market for all learning objects is estimated at 28.5. It is slower in growth now than it was before. It was at 25% just 3 years ago. But parents are continuing to shop. They're finding things, and they're realizing that all learning doesn't have to be in building anymore. This is a sea change in the culture of America, and it will continue to have really heavy impacts on what schools are expected to be in terms of their time and space structure, and also what is the expectation of the materials. If it's just a PDF or a Google Doc, it's just not as interactive as the professional grade material. All right, so what schooling model is most in use today? I think I've touched on this already, but 41% are digital traditional. So they're not really purely traditional anymore. Almost anywhere they're digital. Teachers responded only 22.6%. So you can dig into this on your own, kind of like, where school districts are today, but you'll notice 24% blended or flipped, 24% hybrid simultaneous, which means that teachers are teaching kids that are remote as well as the ones that are live in the class. And then you have which school model is of most interest. So two models tied, and one was blended flipped, and the other the hybrid high flex. So this is different than what they're already doing. This is what they want to be doing. So this is very interesting because it really tells you a lot about the fact that they're realizing there's a different expectation from the public than there used to be. The all physical in-class traditional model is fracturing into a million bits. All right, so device deployments, tablets, 84% citing they have 100 up to 500, 11% 500 to 2,000, and so forth. Device deployments in Chromebooks, much higher. Chromebooks are the preferred mass deployment device. In terms of laptops, 79% say they're under 100 up to 500, and then you see the gradients as we go up. In terms of desktops, there's still a lot of those in the market. Those are mostly in building. And then in terms of gaming, video, editing, coding, 100% of the districts responded that they have between 100 and under 100 up to 500. We're expecting that to increase dramatically over the next couple of years. So, and that's because so many districts are citing that they're going to be having coding curriculum in their buildings. All right, so in terms of what tech, the blue is what's in use now by the districts. Green is we plan to purchase more, yellow is we're considering use, and then orange is not considering use. I'm going to take a look at questions while you read that slide. Okay, question here, I'm going to answer it live. Do you have a figure for how much spent by educators on communications engagement with parents out of the total EdTech market? No, we don't. That's inclusive in the software side, the big iron side. That's not curriculum. So it's part of that larger number. Let me go back to that number so you can see it. 7.8 billion. So all the communications is in that number. All right, so moving on. So the other area of tech from administrators, again, same in use, plan to purchase more, considering use. Esports is a big number. Esports is the way schools are trying to engage kids. If you get to be in esports, if you're completing all your other work, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of considering use in that, 36% considering use. Drones are pretty high, virtual headsets pretty high. All right, so planning and logistics. This is, again, an area we have a lot of attention on. So 27% say it's mostly manual. They're doing a lot of their logistics totally manually, which means, digital documents like spreadsheets and PDFs go around, and people use stickies on whiteboards to say what's going to happen when and do their whole schedule, or unconnected systems, or some connected systems were still manual planning documents that are issued out to the schools. So there's very few that are using connected personalized system where you actually can see your own calendar and do all your own planning. As a teacher, that this is again an area of big concern for us. All right, so the number of staff in the school or district and schools who work more than 50% of their time on logistics, 50% say less than 10, but you can see the numbers are pretty high, 3% or more than 1,000 people just working on that. So it is a pain point, and it's, again, something we have a lot of attention on. So planning and execution for digital resources occurs as follows. Only 11%, the orange bucket, is centralized planning of all digital resources and lessons arranged into courses. Here's why that's of interest to you if you're studying the EdTech space. The workload is largely on the individual teacher to create the entire sequence of events with lessons digitally. This is one of the reasons why they want to go back to normal, because it's been so much work. They're usually not trained to be instructional designers, and they're doing it ad hoc. Usually it's not all built as they go into the year. So administrators are, in terms of estimating the number of digital content resources that they pre-purchased and made available for teaching and learning, 66% are citing they have 1 to 1,000. Now, just one of those 100 to 1,000 could be a full courseware piece, like, IXL Learning, Dreambox, Mind Research, any of those companies that have full digital curriculum, or Edison Learning with full courseware, all those kinds of companies. So the teacher estimates of the number of digital content resources they personally keep. So these are disassociated from the school and district level. These are kept down on the desktop or in an individual cloud account. So there, you have no visibility into them as an institution. You can't evaluate them. They're all down at the teacher level. 66.7%, they say they have 100 to 500 of those pieces. What's alarming is the bigger numbers, 16.2%, 500 to 1,000. So these are things like, again, that are disassociated from the institution being able to tell what they're doing. Now, it's not that different than the days when they did supplemental materials, but now that they're having to build the entirety of the core curriculum into digital, it's a totally different world. The character of the planning, this is interesting to us. 26% of teachers custom build digital lessons on their own knowledge. So they're not even really using much of anything. They're just building it all on their own knowledge. And then 13% are using the open internet, social media. 18% use approved repositories. 36% use a mix of approved and build their own. And only 7% are coaching through existing online courses, apps, or courseware. This is going to make it really real to you why the teachers are overwhelmed because they're having to do all this building. So also a median of only 6.7% of teachers across the nation have 50% or more of their lessons built out, which means they're kind of flying by the seat of their pants every day saying, what am I going to teach today? Where's my stuff? I got to put it all together. I got to issue it out to the students. I got to have the back and forth email traffic of, where is it? What site and what, where do I log in? I can't download the PDF, all that stuff. All right. So we looked at 3 digital tasks that teachers are engaged in. Finding digital lesson materials, time they spend doing that. Building the digital content, because a lot of them do still build all their own, and putting them into lesson sequences, all the time they spend doing that. And then all the digital traffic time, which is that back and forth of which assignment where do I log in? My login doesn't work, help me. Telling students which content, managing the student and parent email, monitoring systems, monitoring app notifications, all those things that are not really instructing kids. It's just traffic. So notice that 24% of teachers say they're spending over 30 hours a week just doing that. So they're not teaching if it's 30 hours a week doing that kind of stuff, unless they're working 24-hour days, which maybe they are. But this is huge. This is the most non-understood thing by administrators, and the reason they really need to look at full curriculum maps of pre-built everything that's professional grade. And what we're telling all of the commercial side providers of software and curriculum, hey, listen, it's time to move into core. Quit just selling this as, extracurricular remedial stuff, your core. So tell people your core, because you're going to save a lot of teachers their ability to actually have human interaction with students. All right. So in January, this is a different survey we did early this year. 74% of teachers were feeling overwhelmed or burnt out. Huge. This is why so many teachers are retiring, or people can't get teachers. Really big problem with what they're having to do. And it's the least inspected thing in the market. All right. So other professional development, what the teachers said that were their biggest issues. Number one, teachers citing newly having to teach students via online, 74% new apps and subscription sites, 72% emotional impacts with families, individual students, and possibly themselves, and so forth. So these are big impacts, and not a lot of districts are addressing these directly. They don't even, usually realize what's really happening out there. They're addressing things like social emotional for the students, maybe, but not necessarily for all their staff. So how teachers prefer professional development is delivered. This is a weighted average. Obviously, in-person workshops still pretty high. A library of document and short video is really high, but scheduled meetings, so just-in-time training, just for me on what I need to know right now as a teacher, this is the highest one. So this is very different than the way a lot of districts do it. They try to do like everybody at once over the summer and everybody gets trained at the same time. All right, so we also asked, which disaggregated services do you offer to your public? These were the top ones we wanted to pay attention to because these are making schools competitive in the landscape today. So do they offer only 58% offer hybrid flexibility, only 42% offer full core curriculum online. And they usually are going to be doing that as a separate online activity. So if you're in that, you can't come in the building physically. You're not allowed. So there's no mixing and matching usually in that scenario. And only 33% offer homeschoolers major tests, some of that state law. Only 32% offer parent tech training. The most innovative districts we've seen that we gave EduJedi Awards to this year were already doing that. It's one of the reasons they got the award, because they've included parents in the community of training. Only 18% offer live chat, which is an area of technology we expect to take off in 2022. Only 15% offer homeschool learning content plans, which is a mistake, because if you do, then they're still tethered to the district and the school. And then looking ahead, so here's where we were at in 2020, 34.9 billion. We saw a huge jump, 6.6 billion. We saw an increase of only 1.8 billion. I'm going to tell you why that was. We were expecting it to be more, but we are predicting at least 1.1 billion in 2021. So it's going to jump up to 38 billion in total spend. So it's still going up. And I'll explain to you what was actually happening with those numbers. So we're expecting hardware to go up nominally. We're pretty much at saturation with devices, but we will maintain this huge annual spend going forward. Major software systems will also increase, but nominally. Digital curriculum will increase in another really big jump, at least by 900 million. Paper resources will probably remain stable because there's a certain percentage of the market that's still trying to go back to traditional and buy paper. All right, so let's give you some perspective of what's really happening with the stimulus. So just let's go back in the Wayback Machine for a second. The ERA stimulus in 2009 was 100 billion for K12 education. It was huge. If you remember those days, a lot of reps will tell you they just had bonanza years after that. It was huge, but it was really only about 900 million out of that 100 billion that was spent on K20, which includes higher ed. So there were bonanza years. So let's just keep that in mind and look at what's happening now. So the 2020 CARES Act 1 is still only about 70% spent out. There's still money in that pot. The 2020 CARES Act number 2, 54 billion, only about 25% of that's actually made its way down to spending by schools, and ARPA is only about 10% spent out. That's because school districts were doing things like surveying their local community and saying, what do you want us to do? And submitting proposals maybe by July and August, maybe. Most of them weren't. So that's going to all fall into, almost all of it into 2022, 2023. So, and that's the largest wave of money out of all of these three waves. But keep in mind, the sheer scope of this is way higher in ARPA for EdTech than the original ERA in 2009, because it's pretty much unrestricted money, and almost everywhere you talk to, they're using it for EdTech. All right, so also perspective for you. The typical K-12 funding that comes from the Fed is only about 8.3%. The rest of the money comes from taxes that are state and local. So the federal allocations in 2019, 2020 was about 71.5 billion, about 72.8 billion in 2020, 21. Those are the normal allocations. Okay, that's regular budget. And then the CARES Act 1, 2, ARPA put another 213 billion on top. So this is to give you a perspective of how much money is coming into the market. And again, we're being really conservative when we talk about 2022. Because of how long it's taking people to make up their mind, what are they going to buy? We could be off by how conservative our numbers are. We know it's still going up and it's maintaining the spend it had, which is huge, because you would expect after you get all your money that you're going to go back to your normal budgets and spend is going to drop off a cliff. That's not going to happen in 2022, probably not in 2023, and probably not in 2024, because the original stimulus, let me go back to this slide. The 2009 took almost 6 years to spend that 900 million out that went into EdTech. I remember that the feds were still telling the states 5 years later, there's still $2 billion left in this bucket. Would you please spend it? Hurry up. And there was places like Arizona. I knew the comptroller there who, when they first got their big checks, they sent them back. They thought it was a duplicate. And the feds had to tell them, no, that's extra money. That's over your normal allocation. So that was an interesting time. So we're having the interesting times now again. All right, so let me give you an example of some of the outlays. This is just California, in case you weren't aware. And please stop me and ask questions if you guys have any questions along the way. Love to hear from you. Chat with me about what's happening. So here's LA Unified. The total relief funding is over $11,000 per student. And those are the 3 bills. Huge. This is a huge amount of money, those 3 acts. It's just so massive, nobody can even think with it. So you can kind of see the rest of these numbers. Sacramento Unified, $276 million. It's just huge. Okay, so someone just asked, content rich. Yes, these slides are very content rich. It's the way we roll here at Learning Council Research. Yes, you will be able to get the full deck. So we can send you the full deck and you can read all of it. All right, so 2020 and 21 appropriations before the CARES Act. Okay, so this was what the United States looked like before they got these huge 3 waves of money. The little dots are just examples of budgets reported stable, like here in Arizona. Interim budgets, people that got the little red dots, they only had interim budgets. Reports of increase, but the yellow states were stable or up. The green were on a budget freeze or it was unknown. And then the gray states were all reporting cuts. This is before CARES Act, okay? So if you think with all the money I just showed you, just California was getting, and that was just a sample of some of the districts, you have an idea that they shouldn't be saying that now. But you have to remember that schools and particular teachers have been told for their whole lives that there's never enough money in education, and they will tell you that now, particularly if they don't want to do a deal with you. They'll tell you there's no budget. That's not true. There's so much budget. It's unbelievable. All right, so all EdTech sales in 2022, this is what we're predicting. Now, the orange dots are where we're going to be. So we'll be pulling from that whole area in terms of local attendance. High growth are the green states. So we're expecting high growth and spend from them. We're expecting the blue states to have moderate growth. And the light blue states will have low growth or decline. Now, part of that low growth is factoring in what the state DOEs are doing. Because they're shuffling money around between programs and sliding it into other functional areas of government because the money's so untethered, particularly in ARPA. The cities and counties are doing some of the same stuff. Now, the ARPA money, a lot of it is going, almost all of it, is going straight to the districts to bypass that behavior at the state level where those states have problem areas in other functions than education. So the feds with ARPA decided, we're not going to let you play these shuffle games. We're sending the money straight to the districts, which is, again, a huge portion of the money. And again, it's untethered. It's not assigned to construction like the original era was in 2009 or for saving jobs. So that bandwidth of that 125 billion is really wide open. And again, most of it's going directly to the districts. So this is just to give you some idea of what to expect in the nation. Tougher in those light blue states than anywhere else. Still money there, right? But not as flush with cash. So just to give you some idea of school organization, if you have never seen this from the Learning Council, when we're training people what the market behaves like, we like to show them how people and titles work. And I want to show you this now because the district level down to chief operation officer, assistant superintendent type of people, and director of finance, the CIO level still has a lot of domain over tech. But the curriculum side with curriculum instruction, including instructional tech, managers, EdTech purchasing, that has boomed and now has a lot more staff in it. We've been hearing that from districts all fall, that they've been restructuring and rearranging, and there's way more money on the curriculum side than there ever was in pure tech. So when you're looking at how you're marketing, you have to remember that the appeal to the curriculum people, which is how's this going to improve learning, not just like how many bits and bytes does it have, is their language. So Learning Council is very attuned to how we're going to present what tech is important based on the curriculum side, which usually has way more power than the tech side. All right, so if you need slides, you're going to need to contact Doug at learningcouncil.com. And I want to show you also what happened now, as long as nobody's asking any questions, but please do. What happened with the Edu Jedi? Because I think you're going to be interested in this. These are the Edu Jedi level awards. There's no teacher so far that made it back past Padawan level. And then these are the school and district level awards. There's no school or district that's made it past the Knight level. But just to give you an idea of the Gainer Awards, these were the Gainer winners this year. And if any of them are your customers, you should email them and make sure you tell them congratulations, because they did a really good job in winning that award. These are the Innovators Awards this year. That's a school level. Now we get into the district level. These are the district level who won awards this year in the Gainer level. More of the gainers from the district level. These are the innovator level awards. Albuquerque surprised us, Cobb, Indianapolis. These are the movers and shakers in the country doing really innovative stuff. The Knight level, we only had 4 districts that made it to Knight level in the last 3 years, but we this year added Pinellas and Volusia, so then now there's a total of 6. So if you're looking to really make a name for yourself in EdTech, those are the districts to go after, because they're looked at like, the shining beacon on the hill for doing things correctly. And then school level award. Oh, I think I showed this one already. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm repeating these. I forgot to show you Achiever. There was only one Achiever level district. That was Keller, also shiny beacon on the hill, Keller Independent in Texas. All right, so how did this work out? This is just to give you a little background on where all the data comes from and what we're really looking at. So when we profiled every single district, Pinellas was one that made Knight level. We looked at everything going on with them, not just their responses to the survey. And we also looked at what they had for programs. And we started to see some trends in terms of what's in use in the market. And so you can see we have here on Pinellas's list, Blackboard, HMH, Curriculum Associates, McGraw-Hill, Safari Montage, Smart Learning. And we notice which ones are making the most progress based on what it is that they're doing. So in the new year, we're going to be telling districts that ask us, what do the best of the best have for tech? So Learning Council will be telling them this is what they have. And then Volusia is similar, right? Long list. And these are never complete lists from the districts because they never have comprehensive inventory, but they're fairly okay. Some of them were super, super long. All right. So those are the main points. I'm going to go back and make sure that I've answered all your questions for what it is that you want to ask me about for the course of the rest of the course of this. I'm sure you guys have questions. So I'm going to share my screen again. Be thinking of your questions. I have to move a bunch of things out of the way in order to be able to get to the right thing to click. Okay, here we go. All right, so questions that you have about what's happening with EdTech Spend, and I'm probably needing to go in my slides to the ones about what's going to happen next year. That was last year, 2021, which I'm already thinking of as last year, and here's 2022. So total spend, 38 billion, and another $1.1 billion pop. And like I said, it could be a lot higher based on the sheer volume of money, but the delays of it moving from the federal level down to the states, or moving from the federal level after the school or district figures out what they want to do, and they write a full proposal that could be 150 pages or longer. And when they get that all done and everybody all agrees to it, when they finally get it up to the feds, and the feds mess around with it for 3 to 5 months and start to give indications that maybe they'll do some things, or they go back and forth with the district. I don't approve this, I approve that. This is taking a long time. So we're being highly conservative right now because of the speed at which the money is actually flowing. It's not what people think it is. It's not like the federal government just passed a law and said, we're allocating all this money and then the checks went out. That's not what happens. So you can expect anyone who's selling EdTech right now to continue to have bonanza opportunity based on how well you've gotten in front of people now into 2023, 2024. So marketing is essential. You can't always go in to this individual districts physically without sort of a hazmat suit. You have to actually have a plan to reach people despite their massive distraction and the fact that they're burnt out and they have too much going on with all the changes that they have. You know, hybrid, are we going to have kids online? What's happening? Are we in this week? And are we shut down in quarantine again? What's happening to us? All right, so I'm waiting for you guys to ask questions. And I know I went through a lot of this really fast, so I can kind of slow down a little bit. But hardware, again, stable, slightly up in the new year, which is amazing because, you know, this was a huge jump in 2020 in total hardware spend. And it's hard for some districts to get hardware because there's been chip shortages. Major software will continue to go up. We are seeing an awakening from districts who are saying, you know, it's not really working. You just use Google Docs and Google Class for everything because all of our elements of learning are distributed out at every level of the teachers. And so we have no predictive analytics. We can't pull data. We really don't have a completed curriculum map, and we need to actually get an LMS. So part of the growth from the learning management system side is expected in here, and it could be higher than we think based on how quickly people are maturing. The same thing with learning object repositories. People are realizing that there's a real value to not having teachers searching around outside the organization just by search term, but they should be searching within a repository that's already been vetted, and everything that's in there is useful for teachers. And if they really can't find anything, then they're allowed to go outside. But then anything they bring in has to be vetted for security and a host of other things. You'll also notice that the districts, in terms of their software side, they're starting to think about how do we put things through the ringer. The more advanced districts have been doing this for a while. It has to go through a loop to get approved by 3 to 6 other people before any teacher's allowed to use it. So the reining in of the willy-nilly, any teacher can get all their seven-year-olds into any app out there and they can put their own personal information in, that's not being allowed anymore. So you're going to see more of a kibosh on just use anything you want from districts, which is leading to that eventual realization that when you're letting everyone do whatever they want with digital curriculum, and you're not leading the digital curriculum all the way to full courseware, you miss out on analytics, which means you can't personalize for every student, and you're stuck with whole group. You can't do pacing, or individual student pace type work so that you can disaggregate the whole group and you can actually have remote students who sometimes maybe are on campus. You're stuck with what you have because it's all about centralizing everything to the individual teacher. If you lose that teacher, they go out on quarantine, and they're the only one who knew how they filed everything in their Google Class or whatever or Microsoft that they're using, your substitute teacher coming in is going in blind. Even if they had access to the former teacher's machine, just figuring out how that person filed everything, hard to do. If you can keep straight of your own desktop, I'd be amazed, because I can't. So those are the issues that we're looking at right now with what we're predicting. And again, we're being really conservative because of the flow of the money. But we also believe that if you as an EdTech firm get out there and really market, and not try to only market by sending a rep live on campus, try to reach people in a different way. Media is a big way. Being able to get your white papers out there and other kinds of things that you need to get in front of people. Those are all sort of, we have a new landscape in marketing for how you reach people. All right, so if you want to really get into these CARES Act numbers, you can ask me any questions about those right now. Doug's answering people on when you can get the slide decks. Okay, good. You put that in chat, Doug. Thank you for doing that. All right. So I don't see a lot of other questions from people. I'm hoping that you're going to ask me more questions about what's happening with all of this data that I just threw at you. Essentially, the markets are going up. It's not going to go down, despite what we think is happening to the economy nationally. This market it feels like a protected enclave of unbelievable amounts of money swirling around. And you should be selling, and you should be targeting higher numbers than maybe you've ever targeted. I don't really know any company that didn't make their numbers in this last year in EdTech. I would be really surprised to hear from one. And if you're one of them, maybe you should call me to let me know. Because literally every company we talk to is doing phenomenally well. And the ones that you wouldn't see in the K12 school and district landscape out in the consumer world, we're seeing 2,000% growth. The homeschooling companies you've never heard of, all those companies, unbelievable growth. They don't need to sell to schools and districts, but there is still there's still a lot of learning that district leaders need to make in terms of when you make a digital transition. It's not just putting stuff in. There's a culture shift, and the way that now content interacts with individual students and what you want your teachers to actually be doing, totally different than the way they've been thinking. Because like I said, you have this huge percentage of teachers are feeling overwhelmed and burnt out. It's because of all that digital traffic. This is a different landscape for how you cause learning to occur. And there's a lot to do in terms of putting the viable curriculum map there. And Learning Counsel is trying to lead. Go professional grade. Don't try to build everything yourself. That's crazy talk. There's standards-based stuff out there in droves, huge number of companies that really you should just plot in, and then the teacher has more time to actually spend on the individual student. And you have analytics that come back on your dashboards, and you can see what every individual student is doing, and the teacher can swoop in and help the one that's behind or didn't get something. Rather than, oh, where did I put that file? What's happening? Oh, I got to answer all this parent email, blah, blah, blah. And they're never eyeballing kids in that particular situation. All right. So let me see. Any other questions? Nope, I don't see anything. Well, we're probably going to be ending here early. Just to making sure no more questions from anybody. And if you missed some of these really critical slides, I'm going to put this one back up here. All right. So I want to thank everyone for attending. I'm surprised you guys are all so shy, but this video will be up online probably in about a week or so, and the transcript of it and the full slide deck will be available for the vendor community side, so they can hear what's actually happening in the market. And thank you for attending. This has been LeiLani Cauthen, CEO of Learning Counsel and proud EduJedi Grandmaster. We'll see you next time. We do a briefing on what's going on with EdTech in the United States. Thanks a lot for joining us. Bye for now.